Hello everyone and welcome back to the MoeGamer podcast. I'm Pete Davison from MoeGamer.net and as usual I'm joined by my good friend Chris Kasky from MrGilderPixels.com. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing well, Pete. How are you?
Had a stressful week, so I'm looking forward to just kicking back and talking about some games rather than having to worry about anything. So should be a good chat today. So what we decided to do today is, because we didn't get to everything we'd planned to cover in our beat 'em up episode last time around, we're going to continue that discussion today and perhaps branch off a little bit into some sort of beat 'em up adjacent stuff as well. It would depend on how long we go on for, I guess, but it's basically going to be a continuation of last time's topic. And before that, as usual, we're going to take a look at some of the news stories that have caught our interest recently and talk a little bit about what we've been playing. So, starting off with the news then. First thing I wanted to mention is mostly of interest to Europeans like me. Sorry, I'm not European anymore, am I? British people like me. Ruff. Apparently Limited Run is in the early stages of opening an operation in the Netherlands, which will enable them to ship more easily and affordably to Europe and adjust shipping rates down worldwide. Because at the moment what they've got is the global shipping rates are so expensive because they're basically eating a lot of the cost when they're sending things further afield. And so what they've done is they've sort of bumped the shipping cost up for everyone to try and absorb some of that expense. But at the moment they're making quite a loss on shipping from the sound of things because of having to ship things all over the world from just this one location. So having another distribution centre in the Netherlands to ship to people in Europe and surrounding areas will certainly be very good for them. So all they've said so far is that they're in the very early stages of sorting that out. So no word on when that's going to be set up yet. But it's happening, finally. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great news. I mean, I know for a lot of people out there, that's been a tremendous barrier.
Yeah, I mean, basically at the moment in Europe, for anything I order from Limited Run, shipping is at minimum $14.99, which is sort of half the cost of a game in some cases.
Yeah.
And if you're getting something like a one of the collector's editions or something like that, it can be even more because they bump the price up because of the weight and the size of the package as well. So
sure.
So it can get very expensive importing stuff. I mean, it hasn't stopped me from doing it because there's a lot of stuff on Limited Run that I very much want. But it'll be nice to sort of make that a little bit more affordable for people who've maybe kind of held off collecting some of the stuff that they do up until this point.
And it's so skewed because there's a lot of European-based limited press houses too.
Yes.
Super Rare Games comes to mind. Strictly Limited. And it's so lopsided because shipping from those guys to the US is extremely reasonable.
Yeah.
It's not as inexpensive as Limited Run in the US to the US, but it's $7 a package instead of $5. So it's totally livable. So it drives me crazy because I'll be grabbing a Salt Android Cactus this week from Super Rare, and it'll probably be maybe $7 to ship to the US. So I've always thought that was unfair.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, they sent out an email recently that was sort of trying to justify the shipping costs and so on. And I kind of get it, but because they are definitely the biggest operation doing this kind of thing in the world, and they are shipping all over the world. But yeah, even so, it'll be very nice to not have to pay quite so much to get some of this cool stuff. Which is cool. Right, moving on then. The second thing that I've got noted here. This is about a mobile game, but it looked quite an interesting story because we both played Final Fantasy Brave Exvius when it first came out, and were quite pleasantly surprised that they'd actually made a real effort to do something a bit beyond the sort of usual tap to advance gacha game thing. They'd actually put in some sort of exploration and random battles and walking around towns and stuff. And the follow-up to Final Fantasy Brave Exvius for mobile basically looks like a Final Fantasy Tactics successor. So this is called War of the Visions, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. And it's open for pre-registration for the Western version now. It's been downloaded 9 million times since it launched in November 2019 in Japan, so it's proving pretty popular. And yeah, just the screenshots of this make it look very much like a new Final Fantasy Tactics game. Like it's got all the sort of gauges you'd expect from Final Fantasy Tactics, like your charge time and that sort of thing, and sort of elemental weaknesses and actions to do and movement and height and that sort of thing. So this could potentially be an interesting game. I mean, it will probably be full of the usual gacha bullshit, but yeah, we're certainly going to be worth a look. The Final Fantasy mobile games have been pretty good on the whole. So yeah, watch out for that, basically.
Yeah, that looks really neat. I mean, Brave Exvius wasn't garbage, so to the extent to it, hey, that's high praise for me. Coming from so this, like, the only mobile game that can ever be good has already launched this week officially. So you can now get Symphony of the Night on mobile on Android. So like that's now the bar for mobile games. So you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to play Castlevania on a touchscreen.
No, me neither. I'm not saying I want to play it. I'm just saying the quality for game design is now Symphony of the Night on mobile.
Yeah.
So
true.
That's the bar now.
True. All right, let's move on. Okay, next story we've got is that there's a Ninja Gaiden-esque platformer called Cyber Shadow coming out this fall. You posted this one, so do you want to tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, just Cyber Shadow's been kind of known for a while. There's been multiple trailers for it. It's being published by Yacht Club, who are great, and it's just a really pretty, like, you know, enhanced 8-bit platformer in the Ninja Gaiden style, and the game soundtrack has some input from Jake Kaufman.
Oh, cool.
He's not composing it, but he's involved in the production of it.
Yeah.
So it's just exciting, and the big deal now is that it does have a fall release window. It never really had any kind of notion of release window before. It just kind of has been delicious trailers, but now we're starting to understand that we should be able to play it in the fall. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks neat. It's like you say, it's very much got that sort of enhanced NES look about it. So it's got that kind of limited color palette, but then it's got the additional level of detail and that sort of thing that we've come to expect from these sort of modern retro games. So yeah, that looks really neat. Yeah, and the
soundtrack is banging. If you listen, the original trailer that came out, I watch it all the time just for the music.
Cool. Yeah, so we'll watch out for that this fall then. Okay, moving on. We've got a new Samurai Jack game coming on the way from Adult Swim Games and Soleil Games. It's called Samurai Jack Battle Through Time, and it's coming to everything. Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And it's sort of making a real effort to kind of pay homage to the art style and animation of the original series. And provide some sort of hack and slash gameplay. I don't know a lot about Samurai Jack. I must confess I've never actually watched it, but I know it's sort of had a bit of a resurgence in popularity recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, so the whole deal with Samurai Jack was... so Samurai Jack was created by Genndy Tartakovsky, who's considered one of, like, the great luminaries of, like, Western animation in the modern era.
Yeah.
He originally made his name doing Dexter's Laboratory.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which was quite good. And then, so essentially, Tartakovsky wanted to create an original action animated series that was, allowed him to kind of explore, like, a very unique artistic presentation while also leveraging, the unique quality of animation in that it could present action in a way that, like, real life never could, in, like, a stylized, beautiful way. So that's kind of how Samurai Jack came to be. And then he produced a number of seasons. I believe it was 3 original seasons. And then it just went away.
Yeah.
For like 10 years. And then they made a season 4. Like 10 years later, and actually brought and like wrapped everything up. So like these days there's a lot of like scuttlebutt about it because they finished it like last year or 2 years ago, relatively recently, and it's led a lot of people like me who are like in their 30s and early 40s who like loved it 10 years ago to like just really retouch with how incredible a franchise it was and how like advanced it was for its time.
Yeah.
And there was a licensed Samurai Jack back on like the GameCube, PS2, Xbox era. I don't remember who developed it, but it was really, really good.
Yeah.
Which is unique. Usually when you've got a licensed game based on a cartoon property, it's never anything to really write home about, but that game was great.
Yeah.
So just the hope is that this is going to continue that tradition and be a really solid action game. I don't know much about this developer. They don't have a large history. I can't even tell if they're Western or Japanese. They've done a Naruto game, but I don't really think that necessarily means they're Eastern developer. I'm having trouble finding much information on them. But either way, the footage looks really cool, and the style is kind of recreating the style of the original show in a pretty attractive way. So I'm excited about this because I really like this property.
Cool. Yeah, the developer of the first Samurai Jack game was a company called Adrenium Games, who apparently got absorbed into what is now Foundation 9 Entertainment. And it was published by Sega. So, yeah, there was some solid talent behind that from the sound of things. So, cool. All right, moving along. The next story we've got is that Brigandine, the most terrifying-looking strategy game on consoles, is coming out worldwide on June the 25th of this year.
What terrifies you about it? Just the sheer scale of it?
Just this game just looks... it frightens me. I look into this game and it's like looking into the abyss, and it's like, I don't know if I'm going to understand this game. But no, I
100% am not going to understand it. I didn't understand the original one.
But yeah, it looks super cool, and it's really nice that it's getting a worldwide release as well. So rather than having to wait for a localization, it's coming out worldwide on June the 25th. It's getting a physical run with help from Limited Run Games, which we'll hear a bit more about that soon, all being well. And yeah, so watch out for that, basically. I think there's a new trailer out for that as well, so have a watch of that.
Have you ever... I know you're not a huge like overhead strategy guy, like turn-based strategy guy. Have you ever heard of the Daisen Ryaku series? Have you ever seen footage of that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, if you really want to be frightened by a strategy game, look up Daisen Ryaku.
Oh my god, so many hexes. So many hexes.
It's a lot. It's a lot of hexes.
Yeah.
It's very that's a very popular series in like Japanese strategy communities. There's only been like one or two entries ever released in the West.
Yeah.
Bizarrely enough, one of the ones that came out in the West was for the Xbox that got localized, the original Xbox, which like nothing said like receptive audience for complex Japanese strategy games like owning an Xbox in the West.
Yeah.
So, like it didn't even make sense, but yeah, that is the peak of terrifying Japanese turn-based strategy. Yeah.
Oh, there's one on Steam apparently. Currently has 58 mostly negative reviews.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to even like describe the experience of playing Daisen Ryaku. It's not fun. It's
yes.
It depends on how much. Daisen Ryaku is for a very specific breed of people who like get off to aircraft carriers.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one review here that just says bad UI and text. I hurt map icon.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, the Daisen Ryaku community is a very interesting group of people.
I can imagine. Yeah, that looks terrifying. Never touching that ever. Nice. Right, moving on to something that is exciting and that I want to get involved with is that Platinum Games has provided a few sort of details and teasers for its new Project GG, which is a multi-platform project directed by Hideki Kamiya, and it's a completely new IP for Platinum Games that they're going to be self-publishing. Apparently Tencent, who invested in them a little while back, they offered to publish, but Platinum decided to self-publish because they wanted full control and ownership of it, which seems to be very much something that they're trying to get into now. So with the Wonderful 101 Kickstarter, the point behind that was so that they could self-publish that and that sort of thing. And it looks like they're very keen to make sure that Project GG is their own thing as well. So yeah, very cool. What do you think of what we've seen of this so far then?
Is there any kind of footage or anything yet? I don't think there's even artwork or have they released stuff finally?
I think there was like a I want to say there was a brief trailer or something because everyone was going crazy about sort of kaiju and stuff recently. Let me have a look.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it other than the fact that it's a new IP that Kamiya's directing. I haven't seen anything from it.
Yeah, there's a teaser trailer that came out about a week ago. You can find it on YouTube. I'll include it in the video version of this podcast. But yeah, it sort of seems to be based around the concept of nature's revenge. So a very sort of common thing for kaiju style stuff. Sure. Is it nature's revenge or the wrath of the gods? So the sort of taglines, and the trailer's all sort of people running around panicking and what you'd expect from a kaiju trailer.
Yeah, well, I'm there. There's nothing I love more than kaiju, because if there's kaiju, there's a very good chance that there's robots.
Yeah, well, it basically appears to be Ultraman versus Godzilla.
Oh, okay. Like that tokusatsu, like spandex hero thing.
Well, it's like a giant Ultraman versus a giant Godzilla type thing, with sort of having a fight in the middle of a city and making a real mess and that sort of thing. So, like I said, the trailer's only like a minute and a half long, and it doesn't show very much of sort of particular note, but it got a lot of people very excited last week. So, yeah, do have a look at that.
The powerful climax to the Hideki Kamiya superhero trilogy. So, what is the Hideki Kamiya superhero trilogy? I'm assuming Wonderful 101. What's the other one?
Beautiful Joe, the first one.
Oh, okay, that's confusing because there's two Beautiful Joes.
Fair enough. Well,
all right.
Yeah.
I never really got into Beautiful Joe. I mean, I respect it. I respect it, but I could never get into it.
I think I own one, but I haven't actually got around to trying it yet. But yeah, that's one of those games that I know a lot of people really really liked, but haven't given it a go for myself yet. All right, moving on. Death End Request 2 has been out for a little while in Japan now, and people seem to be enjoying it quite a bit. And it's been confirmed that it's coming west for PlayStation 4 in 2020. This isn't a surprise at all, but it's welcome confirmation. And yeah, so the interesting thing about this one is that it's a collaboration between the writer of the Corpse Party series and the guy who did the character designs for the original Death End Request, which is Kei Nanamida. So the first Death End Request, if you've not experienced it, was a really interesting blend of sort of isekai and science fiction and classic Japanese horror in many ways. And so for them to bring on Makoto Kedouin from Corpse Party is a real sort of natural progression for that. So I guess they'll be sort of playing up the horror side of things. I've deliberately not looked at any sort of specific details from the Japanese version yet because I want to go in fresh when it comes out. But yeah, if it's more of what the first one offered, I'm definitely very up for that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that the first one did well enough to even merit a second one in the first place.
Yeah, I was quite concerned around the time it released that it was sort of being sent out to die a bit, but it seems like it was received very well, pretty worldwide. So yeah, I'm very happy to see this. And like I say, the few people I know who have been playing the Japanese version, they've had positive things to say about it. So that's cool. No specific date yet, but it is confirmed for this year. So keep an eye on Idea Factory International site for that, I guess.
Awesome.
All right, next up, we got some more shoot-em-ups on the way from Cute Corporation. So they're bringing Ginga Force and Natsuki Chronicles to PlayStation 4 and PC via Steam. No Switch version, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
But because Switch seems to be finding itself to be quite a good home for shoot 'em ups recently, especially with sort of the ability to use things like the flip grip and so on to do Tate mode on the go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that this doesn't appear to be coming for Switch. But Ginga Force is cool. I've got the Xbox 360 version of that. This is from the same people who did Eschatos, which is one of my favourite shoot 'em ups. I haven't played Natsuki Chronicles at all, but Ginga Force is certainly really cool. They're both sort of anime-styled shoot 'em ups, and Cute does some really cool games that they're kind of more in. They're not bullet hell games, basically. They're more sort of classic style shoot 'em ups. They're still pretty challenging. They tend to be fairly long as well. Eschatos is quite long for a shoot 'em up. But it's got a really nice sense of kind of narrative progression as you go through. Like, there's a real strong focus on dramatic sort of sweeping camera angles in the background and really cool music and that sort of thing. And Ginga Force kind of follows on from that tradition. So it's a bit of a shame that Eschatos isn't in here, because I would love to play that again on a third platform. But having bought it on Xbox and PC... But, I'm definitely happy to see these getting an official Western release, because I don't think any of those came outside Japan in their Xbox 360 versions, but they were region-free, so you can import those.
Right.
So that is coming in 2020 via Rising Star Games. Again, no specific date on that yet.
I'm hoping that means a physical release for the PS4 version.
Hopefully, yeah.
Rising Star does publish, so...
Yeah, Rising Star have been pretty good for that sort of thing, so we'll keep an eye out for them. Alright, next one. We got a new Shovel Knight game on the way, which is called Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, which is going to be a puzzle adventure game with platforms to be determined, but it looks... pretty likely that there will be at the very least a PlayStation 4 and a Switch version, because both those versions are at PAX East, or were at PAX East. That's finished now. So this is like a combination of falling block puzzle game and dungeon crawling.
With like roguelite elements.
Yeah. So it's a very strange looking game, but potential to be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, it's a very addictive combination.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of looks like it's got that really sort of appealing kind of energetic puzzle feel to it. Sort of like the more sort of high speed puzzles like Magical Drop and that sort of thing. It looks like it's got that sort of energy about it. It's not the same mechanics or anything like that, but it looks very, very sort of lively and energetic. And yeah, the addition of the sort of roguelike elements and the exploration side of things as well is. Yeah, hard to make out how it's going to work at the moment, but looking forward to giving that a try, because it looks pretty fun.
Yeah, and it's just so visually appealing too.
Yeah. We love some Shovel Knight.
Jake Kaufman on soundtrack. So.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, talking of cool developers, we've had another cool announcement of a sort of retro-inspired game called Hotshot Racing, which is coming for PS4, Xbox One, Switch and PC this spring. And the cool thing about this is that Sumo Digital are working on this one alongside developer Lucky Mountain Games. So Sumo Digital, if you're not familiar, they did the Sonic racing games, among other things. And a lot of the people at Sumo Digital used to work at Bizarre Creations as well, so they worked on things like Blur and Project Gotham Racing and so on. So they really know their racing games. And what this is a racer inspired by the sort of low poly look of stuff like Virtua Racing and so on. So it looks like they're going for a kind of an homage to things like Virtua Racing, Cruising USA, Sega Rally, and that sort of thing. So all of the they specifically mention the kind of arcade machines you'd see on seafronts in the UK. So I think I've mentioned before that the arcade experience here in the UK was very much something you did when you went on holiday. It's not something you could just go into town and do. You had to be by the seaside to go to an arcade in most cases, and so you tend to have sort of the most impressive arcade machines there, things like the racing games and the hydraulic cabinets and that sort of thing. But this looks super cool. Looking forward to giving it a try.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Always up for more retro races for sure.
I specifically have a soft spot for that like early 32-bit, like low poly racing. Like I love
the sort of untextured low poly thing. Yeah,
like Daytona.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very distinctive look, and it's Yeah, a lot of people sort of say that age of 3D graphics hasn't aged all that well, but I think sort of the era before they textured everything has aged quite nicely. So like there's a few textures around the place in this, but it's mostly sort of flat shaded polygons with very sort of sharp angles and very harsh kind of harsh lighting between different sides of the objects and so on. It's got a very distinctive look. It's very similar to Horizon Chase Turbo. Yeah. So, yeah, and that game really works from a visual perspective as well. So, yeah, looking forward to that. So that's coming out in spring. Again, no date on that one. Yeah, we don't seem to be doing release dates at the moment. It's just spring 2020. Okay, next one we've got is that Panzer Paladin, which is the new game from the developer of Mercenary Kings, which is Tribute Games. That is coming out this summer because... no release dates. This looks lovely. I mean, I would expect nothing less from Tribute Games, of course, but this actually kind of has the look of more so than retro consoles. This actually looks more like a retro home computer game in many ways, in terms of sort of the color palette and
the heavy design. Use of black.
Yeah, lots of black space and things like the status bar and stuff, like the big energy bar at the top with the portrait and the character's name and stuff like that. That reminds me very much of sort of Commodore 64 and Atari 8-bit style of presentation. But yeah, this looks fantastic. So, I mean, you're a bit more familiar with this than me. So what's the gist of this then for those who...
we don't know too much, right? There isn't even really a heck of a lot of footage. From what I understand, it's kind of leveraging some of the Assault Suits Lanos style gameplay, where you're in the giant robot and you can get out of the giant robot and also be your little pilot to fight. Mm-hmm. You can equip weapons that dropped by the enemies. There is a rock, paper, scissors weapons system for gauging like how to engage in combat and like what weapons to use against what enemies based on what they're using. You can eject as your pilot, and you can use a laser whip that also is for navigation to swing across gaps. So it's just kind of a really good formula for a side scroller. I mean, these kind of like you're in a giant robot but can also eject and be a pilot games are not common. But they have a solid following. What was the one on Super Nintendo from LucasArts? Metal Warriors, I think. Mm-hmm. Was all incredible. So, and obviously the pedigree of Tribute, just like So yeah, just another cool indie side scroller to be excited about with a really beautiful, distinct visual presentation. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, this looks cool. I will be keeping an eye on that for sure. Next story we've got is kind of a follow-up to one we mentioned, I think it was last time, which is that the Henk Nieborg-fronted Gauntlet-inspired action-adventure Battle Axe it's got itself an official publisher. It's going to be published by Numbskull Games, and they're going to be doing a physical release of it as well, which is nice. This is, if you've not seen this is Henk Nieborg. He'd done a lot of stuff for WayForward, is that right?
Yes, he's worked on some of the Shantae titles.
Yes. He's basically doing a top-down action adventure that's very much inspired by Gauntlet. It's got a soundtrack by Manami Matsume. It's got solo or co-op play, and it looks absolutely lovely. I mean, there's been a few trailers going out about it now, so yeah, it's got through its Kickstarter goal successfully as well. And yeah, it's going to get a broader release as well, so you won't necessarily have to jump on board with a Kickstarter to get yourself a copy to put on your shelf, which is nice. Numbskull's been around for a while, but I feel like I've sort of noticed their presence a lot more recently. They seem to be sort of really stepping their game up in terms of sort of really promoting their stuff. So a lot of the stuff that they've put out recently, they put out the new version of Uno. Okay. They published Deadly Premonition Origins. They had something to do with Crystar. They just announced that they're doing a physical release of all of the... I don't know if you're familiar with the Holy Potatoes games as well.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Is it going to be like a compilation?
Yeah, they're doing a 3-in-1 Switch cartridge for them, so they're all.
I might buy that. Those are good games.
Yeah, that's out in May. I think they announced that this week. So go pick it up.
Cool. More money to spend.
Yeah, fantastic. Always money to spend, isn't there? But yeah, them picking up Battle Axe is really cool, and sort of further evidence that they're sort of really sort of building their stuff up at the minute. So cool. All right, last thing I've got is that NIS America announced that the 2 Prinny games, which were sort of action platformers that were originally released for PSP, they are coming to Switch on one cartridge, featuring both Prinny 1, Can I Really Be the Hero, and Prinny 2, Dawn of Operation Panties Dude. So, yeah, make of that what you will. These are Disgaea spin-offs, obviously. So, like, the second one, Operation Panties, is because someone has stolen Etna's panties and the Prinny hordes must go and retrieve them for her. Otherwise, there will be consequences. But yeah, I haven't played these, but I've always wanted to. And now I'll be able to get a lovely copy to put on my shelf and play on Switch. And be able to play it on the TV as well, which is nice.
These are some of the earliest examples of that kind of, like, massacre side-scroller.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one-hit kills, really difficult physics.
Yeah,
they are tough as nails. I don't think I ever got past the second level of the first one.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent. They're a nightmare. Because you have limited lives too. I think you have 99 Prinnies. I think, and that's it. Like you have to beat the game with, which like it sounds like a lot. But then you play the first level and you burn through like 30 lives, and you're like, uh-oh. Because it's one of those games that you can't adjust your direction once you've committed to a jump. Oh,
Castlevania jumping.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, if you want to, you can pre-order that now. NIS America are doing one of their collector's box versions of it for $60, which includes the game, Prinny's Scrapbook of Memories, which is presumably an art book, Prinny's Awesome Mix, which is presumably a soundtrack, and then Can I Really Be a Prinny Block? Don't know what that is. And then a Asagi Wars EX Alpha Championship poster. So
that's exciting.
But yeah, this seems to be sort of NIS America following the pattern they've done with a lot of their sort of more niche releases recently, which is where they do a really nice, very affordable limited edition that just gets like a single print run or so. So things like Lapis Labyrinth they did that for, and a few other things that they've released like that as well. So yeah, jump on that if you're interested in it. Oh, the Prinny block is like one of those
mini Legos.
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called. There's a specific
nano block.
Nano blocks, that's it. Yeah, and it's a little Prinny with a dagger. That's super cute.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Must have.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I might pre-order for myself that.
This appears to be another one of NIS's, like, the physical version is the collector's edition releases.
Yes. That's what I mean. So that's why it's so sort of affordable in comparison to some of their other stuff. So sort of $60 will get you the game and a bunch of cool stuff as well, which is pretty reasonable. All right, cool. Anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think that's it. There hasn't been a lot going on lately, which is fine by me because I got plenty to play.
Yes, and plenty of money to spend from the sound of things as well. Oh, dear.
It's income tax season in the States right now, so
yes, I've seen that quite a few times on Twitter on the last couple of days. People going, got my income tax refund, time to pre-order all the things I've been wanting for ages. Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, okay.
I got my analog NT and Mega SG in, so that my afternoon will be consisting of hooking those up and checking those out.
Nice. Yes, well, I got a few bits and pieces through the post today. I got my copies of Mary Skelter and Chronicle from a limited run finally. which is cool. And also a bunch of 50p PS2 garbage that I bought from CEX as well. So I'm going to enjoy
That's
checking
incredible.
that out as well.
I love cheap PS2 stuff. You find so many gems doing that, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
especially
a significant part of my PS2 shelf is 50p garbage that I adore.
Well, because you guys got the Simple 2000 series.
Yeah.
We didn't. So, there's so much to, mine there. How did you get Moero Chronicle and Mary Skilter before me? I can, drive to Limited Run's headquarters.
I don't know. But yeah, that arrived this morning. So that's cool. All right. So I think it's time to take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a bit about what we've been playing recently. So we'll see you in just a moment. Welcome back. For our second segment, we're going to talk about what we've been playing recently. So, I'll hand over to you first of all. Chris, what have you been up to?
I have been playing a whole lot of Joymasher Studios' Blazing Chrome.
Ah, cool. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I know I've brought up Joymasher a couple times in previous episodes, but they are the folks behind Oniken and Odalis the Dark Call, which are respectively really well executed send-ups to, kind of specifically, in Oniken's case, that Natsume era, side-scrollers, like Shadow of the Ninja and Shatterhand, with that really fast Ninja Gaiden sense of movement. And Odalis is kind of a tribute to a combination of Castlevania and the Euro-style home PC platformers that had large, expansive, explorable stages.
Yes.
So they've got a great reputation for this kind of 8-bit tribute kind of game. And they are from Brazil, which is becoming a thing. Brazilian development indie dev houses, Horizon Chase.
Yeah.
What's up with this Brazilian renaissance? It's awesome.
Well, the thing is that the Brazilian games industry has kind of sort of always been stuck a little bit in the past from everyone else.
Yep.
So now that sort of retro stuff is very fashionable, a lot of those developers who grew up playing Super NES games until sort of the early 2000s in some cases, they're now able to sort of leverage their love of those retro games directly into producing stuff like this. So it's not surprising to me at all, given the sort of background of gaming in that region.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to watch happen. As I've mentioned in previous podcasts, one of the things I'm really specifically interested, especially in the modern era with the indie sphere, is regionality of game development.
Yes, yeah.
Like seeing what kind of games come from where, and what are some styles and trends we can track to different regions and different countries. And I think that's really neat to see kind of national identity. It's something that happens a lot in cinema, as well, obviously, talking about the German Impressionist cinema and French New Wave, and it's really cool to see that extrapolated to the game development sphere as well.
Yeah,
so,
it's also really fascinating to me to see certain specific cultures paying homage to other ones as well. So if we think of something like VA11 Hall A, which was Venezuelans paying homage to Japanese PC-98 games, and then compare that to something like Coffee Talk, which was Indonesians paying homage to Japanese PC-98 games, and seeing the different approaches that they took there, that's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like Joymasher, and I really like their output. I think they've got a ninja game in the works now too. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but the footage is gorgeous. So Blazing Chrome is their attempt to send up the run and gun. So it's very much just 16-bit Contra today, with just a beautiful visual presentation, great music. And it's mostly Contra, Specifically, it feels a lot like Contra Hardcore on the Genesis, because if you're going to ape Contra, why not ape the best? But it also has little bits and bobs that are pinched from other run and guns to kind of give it its own identity. So like, it's got a melee attack if you tap the fire button when enemies are near, which comes from Metal Slug. It's got a dodge roll. It's got a lot of other things all mixed up in there to make something that feels a little bit unique, but also still very much makes you go, oh, I'm totally playing Contra. Like, it's great. There's little companion robot power-ups you can collect, which definitely feel like a tribute to Shatterhand on the NES, when you would get those power-ups and the little robots would follow you. There's one that increases your defense, one that increases your attack, or one that doubles your speed and gives you a double jump. So you're always trying to get those to change your performance. There's all kinds of cool little gimmick stuff in there. There's the first level has this amazing like raid on an enemy base where you're where there's a helicopter gunship like following you in support of you, and you can jump up and grab the railing on the bottom of the helicopter and shoot from that. And then if you're playing 2-player, there's also a mech suit there that you can get to like jump in. And so like one of you is like storming on the ground with like the mech suit with Gatling guns. The other of you is hanging by one arm from a helicopter rail, just like firing indiscriminately. It's like super bombastic. It's really a pleasure to play. There's auto-scrolling hover bike sections. There's one in a later level that's pretty much, I don't know why you would want to do this, but it's definitely a tribute to Battletoads. Like, it has like the pits, the pitfalls, and like the barriers that you have to jump over and like learn the rhythm and memorize where the pits are versus where the jumps are. There's one of the later stages totally flips everything around and has a 3D reticle shooter section where it's like Star Fox, but like you're a dude in a rocket pack.
Awesome. Like,
incredible. Like, big bosses. There's like these incredible moments in it too where it's like, I almost want to call it like, it's really like it's cinematic. Like, there's a really unique sense of like cinematic presentation to this game. So like you get to the whole second level takes place, you're trying to take out an enemy supply train. So like part 1 of the level is the hover bike chase while you're trying to catch up to the train. And then you board the train, and then you raid the train, and then the whole level is like the end of the train to the front of the train. And then you get to the front of the train, you emerge from this tunnel, like, you go out, you see the mountains, you see the sunset. The camera swings a little bit like pixel art way, like it just kind of shifts the viewpoint a bit. And there's lens flare off the sunset, and you see like a glint in the distance, and then the freaking boss swoops in like this giant like metal angel, and then it like F's you up immediately by like summoning thunderbolts. It's like they just really wanted to make this cool. Like, I know cool is like a terrible adjective, but it's like, there's like when my buddy and I played this for the first time, like co-op, and almost beat it through, we were just screaming the whole time, like, no way, like, and that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. There's unlockable characters. There's also one of my favorite things in the world, delightful, crunchy, digitized speech.
Oh, nice.
That is like purposefully bad.
Like sort of Genesis style.
Yeah. It's just like, let's play some Chrome. And there's like static and like I can't, like, it's so good. Yeah, I'm really in love with this game. They've made something really special.
I remember we used to refer to that kind of speech as mouthful of cornflake speech.
That's accurate.
Yeah. And
tinfoil. Just like bits of tinfoil. It's incredible. I cannot praise this game enough. It's so much fun. Like, I'm probably going to play it after we're done recording, just because I've been hyping myself up talking about it again.
Nice. Oh, sounds great. Cool. Anything else you've been up to then?
Little bits of stuff, but that's kind of what I've put the most time into recently.
Okay, cool. All right. There's sort of two main things that I've been spending my time with recently. And a couple of other things I actually can't talk about at the moment. A couple of you may have seen recently that I've been doing a bit of freelance contributing to Nintendo Life recently. So I did a review of Prison Princess for them a while back, which is an interesting sort of room escape style adventure game. And I've got a couple more assignments on the way for them that, like I say, I can't talk about too much in the minute, but sort of later this month you will see 2 more reviews from me on over on Nintendo Life, so that's cool. The things I can talk about are the things that I've been covering on MoeGamer recently, which are the Psycho Shooting Stars collection and Atelier Iris. So I'll start with the Psycho stuff, as this is my first encounter with a lot of these games, but I know you said you're a big fan of Psycho stuff, and
yeah, always have been.
Yeah, didn't you say it sort of really got you into modern shooters in some ways?
Yeah, I wasn't a big shooter guy for most of my life, but then I just happened to pick up a copy of Strikers 1945 on the PS1 for $14.99 in a budget bin, and my life has kind of never been the same since. So I got that, and later down the line, I didn't really get into shoot 'em ups until the Dreamcast era,
right?
But Gunbird 2 on the Dreamcast, I used to play religiously. And I know we had a bit of a discussion, and we had a game we had mentioned in previous discussions was Soul Divide.
Yes.
And that was another one where Soul Divide was released by a weird publishing house on the PS1 in the States as a $19.99 budget title. So I just grabbed it because I thought the cover was cool. I was kind of too young to know what I was really doing, but I always used to love that game. So in retrospect now I recognize those are all Psycho titles, but yeah, I like Psycho stuff a lot. And I think Psycho games very specifically have a really unique sense of movement and weight and feel to the way their ships move, which is not like other developers' shooters.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So far I've played the 3 Strikers 1945 games and Soul Divide, and there's definitely a distinctive feel to it, and a very strong feeling of physicality to the weapons, especially in the Striker series. So there's a real strong sense of feedback from your weapons, and you can practically feel the bullets ripping through the enemies. Just sort of the visual and audible feedback you get from the various different weapons that you unleash in that is just so satisfying, and it's really, really good. I really, really like those games. The third one I am very bad at because it's considerably harder than the first 2, but they're all great games, and I actually very pleasantly surprised myself with those, because I tend to prefer sort of more what I think of as more sort of outlandish sci-fi spaceship shooters and that sort of thing. And I'd kind of gone in with the sort of preconception that it's Strikers 1945, that's going to be fairly drab and boring World War II stuff. But no.
no, these games are batshit crazy.
Yes. No, you're there flying a Spitfire against a train which suddenly jumps into the air and turns into a giant mechanical spider, and and starts throwing things at you, and you're just oh my god, this is wonderful.
Yeah, the original Strikers on the NES, the 8-bit was drab, but the Psycho ones are nonsense, pure nonsense. It's delicious.
But yeah, they're a ton of fun, and they got some interesting mechanics, and again, I appreciate the fact that they have some challenging bullet patterns in them, but they're not bullet hell games, so there's a very distinctive sort of feel to them of learning the levels and learning the enemy patterns, and the wide choice of different planes you can fly and their weapon loadouts as well really makes them interesting as well, because they're more than just aesthetic differences. There's very strong differences in feel between how all those different weapons operate and how the charge attacks work, and even how the bombs work in many cases. So yeah, you can have a very distinctive experience in 2 different playthroughs just by picking a different plane at the start. And as for Soul Divide, wow. Soul Divide is very, very strange indeed, but I kind of love it.
yeah, it's cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Soul Divide, if you've not come across it before, it's technically it's a side-scrolling shoot 'em up, but it's structured very differently to any shoot 'em up that I've played before. In that it's almost structured a bit more like a beat 'em up, in that you have enemy encounters that you need to clear before you can move on. So like you'll start each stage with like a very, very brief swarm of popcorn enemies, and then you'll get like maybe 4 or 5 enemies that appear on screen that need a significant amount of shots and or melee attacks, because you can melee attack in Soul Divide as well, to dispatch. And so rather than learning a whole level's worth of attack patterns and so on, you basically have to learn how these individual characters attack you and deal with fending off 4 or 5 of them at the same time, which is very different to any other shoot 'em up that I've played, but it gives the whole thing a really distinctive experience. And then, of course, you got the sort of Ray Harryhausen bosses, which are just incredible.
Yeah. I'm so glad we get to revisit Soul Divide, because we brought it up in our episode specifically about games with like chunky physical visual aesthetics.
Yeah, but those bosses are incredible. I mean, they just look like stop motion animated models, and it's just wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful, and the way they sort of shoot out these digitized flames at you, and it's fantastic. I love it. It's a great game.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I've never played anything like it. The only thing I can liken it to that's came out since was Akai Katana.
Oh yeah. That was Cave, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
I haven't spent a lot of time with that, actually. I do actually own a copy of the Xbox 360 version of that, because that was in that brief period when Cave games got officially released in Europe as well, so I did pick up a copy of that, but I've not spent a significant amount of time with it. I should definitely have another look at that at some point. I remember that having a very complicated scoring system, which is nothing unusual for a Cave game, I know, but
sure.
I remember Akai Katana was particularly complicated.
Yeah. I have a really soft spot for like shooters of the shooter subgenre that like you are just a magical person that is flying.
Yes, yeah.
Does that sound stupid? But there's like a couple.
No. I know
like
exactly
that.
what you mean. Yeah. No, I like that. I've always liked Death Smiles for that reason, because you're a cute girl flying through the sky, shooting things. Yeah. No, it's a thing. I'm sure. Absolutely. All right, yeah. So I'm currently working through game by game of the 2 Psycheo collections on MoeGamer.net. So as you hear this, I'll be continuing to cover some of the other games in the Alpha collection. I think I've got Dragon Blaze and Zero Gunner left to go in the Alpha collection, and then there's the Beta collection, which has Gunbird and Gun Barrack and some other ones I can't remember offhand. It's got the Samurai Aces as well in there, I think.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait for you to play Gunbird.
Yeah.
Gunbird is such a colorful, like cartoony, fun time. Like the characters are so much fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. So that'll be very soon, I'm sure.
I wonder if they're going to localize the third one, because there's 3 collections in Japan and Asia.
Yeah, I've not heard anything about that yet. But, I mean, you never know these days, do you? Sometimes they'll just sort of sneak something out and say, oh, by the way.
Yeah, that's true.
So, we'll see. Hopefully they will. Because, again, these were versions that NAS America did some really nice sort of limited print collector's editions of. That have they have 3 CD soundtracks in there, which is nice. So, it's like full soundtracks for all of the games that are in the collection.
That's incredible. Because these games also have good music, but that's not a surprise for shooters. Like, that's kind of an expectation.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, it's definitely nice to have a full collection of all those. The art book's a bit pathetic, because it's just like a little thing that they tucked in the Switch case rather than the full-on art book. But
I hate when they do that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's...
It's cute. That's like, I love those little books.
Yeah. So that was a slight letdown, but like I say, with like, a big box of CDs in there, I can't complain too much for sure. Alright, so the other thing that I've been covering on MoeGamer.net is part of the Atelier mega feature that I'm doing at the moment, which is Atelier Iris Eternal Mana.
Yes, let's gush.
Can't remember if I've talked about on here before. I don't think I have, but...
No, not yet.
Yes, so I know that you haven't played a lot of the more recent Atelier games, but you have a lot of a lot of fond memories of Eternal Mana in particular, don't you? So
this is the Atelier game I like.
Yeah.
this is the Atelier game I like. I don't like the other two in the series nearly as much, and then when I found out that the other ones were more like, basically when I found out that Eternal Mana was the outlier that played nothing like standard Atelier games, that's how I knew this series wasn't for me. Because I loved Eternal Mana so much, and I didn't like 2 and 3 in the Iris series nearly as much. So when I found out that those hewed closer to a traditional Atelier experience, that's how I knew I didn't care.
Yeah. That's fair enough. So to give some context to that for those who haven't encountered the series before, so what we describe as a traditional Atelier experience tends to be the majority of your gameplay would be based around a workshop and a small town usually, and you usually find yourself having a major objective, which is often against a time limit, and then various smaller objectives, all of which involve crafting items in some way. So the gameplay tends to go back and forth between going out into the world to go and collect ingredients from field areas and from monsters and that sort of thing, and then coming back to town and crafting things and engaging in various events around the town and that sort of thing. What Eternal Mana did was it basically took that concept, but then it really played up the sort of traditional RPG style aspects surrounding it. So rather than being, you're still sort of based in one place in Eternal Mana, but there's much more of a sense of going on a journey and going around and exploring, and an unfolding plot happening in different places rather than the plot happening back at your workshop. So yeah, it's a much more sort of conventional RPG style thing where you get a party together and like your party hangs out and they get to know each other and the characters fall in love and there's sexual tension between a couple of them and all that sort of thing, and there's a adorable cat girl who's the best. Yay. But yeah, what I really like about Eternal Mana is that it does the things that I like about conventional Atelier games, which is having a really strong sense of world building and characterization for even the most random of NPCs. But then it wraps that around a conventional RPG structure, so you kind of get a best of both worlds thing going on. So, and that gives it a very unique feel as well to me, because we tend to think of RPGs of this type as being strictly linear for the most part, and Eternal Mana, it does have a linear main plot, but at any given point in that narrative there are so many additional side activities that you can go and do that it doesn't feel linear. It always feels like you have a lot of choice in what you can go and do. So it always feels like you can go and visit one of the shopkeepers and get some ingredients for them to craft things, and then that will trigger some events with them where you get to know them a bit better. And then it turns out that like the different shopkeepers, they have relationships with one another. So like triggering an event in one place will trigger an event somewhere else. And then you just start getting really invested in these characters as well. Like you start getting really into the soap opera of these characters' lives. And you're like, oh, I really want to help the magic shop owner out because she's really sad that her brother died and she wants to kill herself. And I don't want her to kill herself because I do this. But if I help her make this item, she might still kill herself. And I'm like, I'm really upset about that. And then you go and help the bakery lady try and make her ultimate sweet so she can impress the owner and open a sweet shop instead of just having to bake bread all day and that sort of thing. And it's just an amazing sense of world building in that game, and I just absolutely love it. And just mechanically it's really solid as well. It's got a really satisfying battle system with sort of things like interrupt attacks and sort of delayed moves and doing alchemy in the middle of battle and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, that's neat.
There's some really nice sort of towards the end of the game. It really sort of it does that thing where it kind of brings a lot of the mechanics from the rest of the game together. So while you're exploring the final dungeon, you have to make use of a lot of these skills that you've unlocked throughout the game. So there's a lot of exploration-based skills. So like you can blow up blocks and you can summon a particular mana to stand on, and you get the ability to fly around places. And in this final dungeon, you have to use all of these things at different points to get around. And then that carries right up to the final boss as well. The final boss is probably one of the more challenging final bosses I've had in an RPG. because it's got very high health. It's got a lot of attacks that can potentially kill you, but it's also quite vulnerable to doing things like the various sort of interrupt attacks and things you can do. So you can actually sort of interrupt a lot of its instant kill moves and that sort of thing. So you really need to have a good understanding of how the core mechanics of the game work in order to finish it. And I really like that rather than it just being a bit of a slog with dramatic music. So,
isn't one of the late game bosses in that game busted? Like either the end boss or one of the super bosses. There's like one where like if you don't kill it in like a certain amount of time, the game will just like shit itself and erase your save file or something. Or is it Atelier?
Or
Tonelico maybe. There's one of these
Artonelico 2's final boss is broken for some people. I didn't have a problem with it. I think they actually fixed that for the European version.
Okay.
Atelier Iris, again, for some people, I think there is a bug towards the end of the game where if you have the speech turned on, it will crash. Again, I didn't encounter that problem, so I don't know if they fixed that for the European version, but I certainly didn't encounter a problem with it last night when I beat it. Good. So, but I think the North American version might have an issue in that area.
I just remember when I was talking to you the other day and you were like, I'm getting to the end of Eternal Mana and I'm ready to fight the last boss. And I was like, I hope it doesn't shit itself and erases save file. Because I'm pretty sure that's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't think the problem is that major when it happens. I think it's just that it crashes and it doesn't play the full ending. Which is obviously still heartbreaking, especially when you have a half an hour fight before that. But but still, yeah, I didn't encounter that when I played it last night. So hopefully it won't happen again because I need to do it a second time to get the full ending when you load your post game data. So hopefully that won't happen. I'm going to give that a try after we're done here today. But yeah, I've been really enjoying that, and it's been sort of a very nice contrast to the Atelier games that I've had experience with today, which is mostly the Ireland series. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how things develop from here because there's a lot of that series left to go, and a lot of different people I've spoken to all have different favourites in the series. So very intrigued to explore where it goes from there. But yeah, I've had an absolute blast with Eternal Mana.
Oh, I'm so glad. It's such a great series.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think that's pretty much everything that I can talk about for now. So I think it's probably time that we take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we will continue our beat-em-up discussion. So we'll see you in a moment. Welcome back for our third segment. Like I say, we wanted to continue our discussion from last time because last time we rabbited on for ages about the golden age of beat-em-ups and didn't really get into any of the sort of modern stuff that we'd taken some notes on. So there are some sort of modern beat-em-ups that we specifically want to mention. And then there's also the fact that we can talk a little bit about what I think of as beat-em-up adjacent games, which are styles of gameplay that incorporate elements of beat-em-ups, but they're obviously their own distinct thing in their own different ways as well. So as a sort of natural progression from last time then, shall we just start with the sort of modern beat-em-ups that we wanted to talk about a bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the thing to do. I had a little bit of kind of a transitory stuff I wanted to talk about too, right? Because we spoke more specifically about kind of the old stuff and like arcade stuff in like the late 16-bit, early 32-bit era. I just wanted to take a minute to touch on a little niche that doesn't get mentioned a lot, which is the Dreamcast era.
Yes. Yeah.
Like specifically like the Naomi arcade board Dreamcast beat 'em ups. Stuff like Dynamite Cop and Zombie Revenge. Mm-hmm. So like these were games that were definitely beat 'em ups, right?
Yes.
They had combos and hit stun, a heavy emphasis on timing, animation awareness, and crowd control. Like all the stuff we talked about defining a beat 'em up. But they didn't have that belt scrolling presentation, right? They leveraged the greater power of the Naomi arcade board and what the Dreamcast was capable of in processing, and usually had either like an overhead or like an isometric or like a behind the back camera style, sometimes shifting camera styles based on the situation for a more cinematic presentation. But these were still very much beat 'em ups. They just weren't belt scrollers. Yeah. Which and they were great. Dynamite Cop was great. Dynamite Cop had like tons of weapons, right? Like, if you wanted to, like, pick up an arcade cabinet and smash it over someone else's head, like that was cool. You could do that. And obviously, I mean, we're such fans of 2D and pixel art and 2D styles, but, like, one of the things that 3D really allows in games is playing with scale and like to create crazier stuff. So like there's like a classic boss battle in Dynamite Cop where you're fighting a freaking octopus in the belly of a cruise ship. like stuff like this wasn't really possible to that sense of scale in in a 2D game. To have it executed quite well enough. So these games really opened up greater avenues for like how bombastic and crazy like a beat 'em up could get, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't played Dynamite Cop myself, but I did play Zombie Revenge quite a bit. I remember that being a lot of fun. And I remember at the time that came out, it felt quite unusual to play a game with that sort of structure again, because at that point in time, sort of home video games were not exclusively trying to move away from the arcade structure, but it was getting rarer to see sort of specifically arcade structured style things. So I kind of went into Zombie Revenge expecting something a bit more console style, and then I was very pleasantly surprised when I went in there, and it was basically an arcade game, with a lot to like about it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that game got savaged, as you can imagine, the press for just being an arcade game that you could beat in a half hour.
Yeah.
But that's what the Dreamcast was the last bastion of the home arcade.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, so many Dreamcast games were home arcade ports, and that's one of the reasons it's so beloved today by, like, thoughtful game fans, because that's a thing that's dead now. But, like, Dynamite Cop, Zombie Revenge, House of the Dead, Crazy Taxi, Charge and Blast, all the fighting games, Techromancer, like that was what the Dreamcast did, was like beautiful arcade ports.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sort of went into something like Zombie Revenge expecting to play Resident Evil or something like that, and it's
sure.
Yeah, and I mean, sort of to a certain extent, you can sort of understand that based on the way that it sort of uses camera angles and cutscenes and that sort of thing. But once you start playing it, it should become pretty clear that no, that's not what it's doing at all. It's being an old school beat 'em up. I remember having a good time with that. I remember playing it co-op with some friends, and I remember having a lot of fun with both of us just saying "bullets" to each other all the time.
Oh yeah,
just because the voiceover in it is so funny.
I forgot about that.
We just run around going "bullets."
There's something specific about like the game sound effect, like voiceover sound effects like that. Like I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day about how like you love light gun games as much as I do, and like I love House of the Dead and the very specific reload. And like never in my life for the past 25 years have I ever refreshed a web page without going reload in my head. Like it's like my brain does it automatically.
Yeah,
it's my favorite.
I do that when playing first person shooters with friends as well. I do that as well, and also Time Crisis action. Whenever you start doing something. Yeah, actually no. I tell you what else Time Crisis got that we do as well is we discovered very early on that the original PS1 version of Time Crisis in Europe, it had dubs for all the European languages on the disc as well.
Okay.
So we used to play it in German, and it was brilliant.
I love it.
Just because you'd be playing through it and it'd be going, Aufladen! Aufladen! But yeah, just stupid stuff like that. It was like arcade games were made for that sort of thing. I know that a lot of people are very fond of, like, is it Metal Slug that has heavy machine gun?
Yeah, heavy machine, flamethrower. Ground charger. I love the voiceovers. And thank you when you like save like the hobo like POWs and they like take their underwear and give you power-ups. Yeah, I love arcade sound effects.
Yeah, but I think that's a big part of the sort of appeal of it, isn't it? I mean, I've talked about sort of what I think of as the distinctive Sega presentation of things, which is sort of things like having giant numbers on screen and that sort of thing, like big time displays that count down in hundredths of a second because it's more dramatic and that sort of thing.
Dynamite Cop has that.
Yeah. So, and those sound effects are a very big part of that sort of thing, and beat 'em ups are a good example of where you'd encounter that sort of thing pretty frequently. So, even stuff like in a lot of games where you sort of get the little arrow pointing go onwards, like some of them would speak that as well. They'd be like, go, go, go.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And even the ones that didn't have speech, there would just be this delightful like chirp, or like, I love it. And that's such a huge part of the beat 'em up. Just like, we talked about like just like the satisfying, like, what is a beat 'em up without satisfying punch sound effects?
Yeah.
Just like a billiard ball being thrown into a steak. Like I can't. It's so good.
Yeah, I think this is an important part of the genre as a whole, isn't it? Because it's sort of one of those genres that really embraces its gameness. In that it's sort of, yes, it might try and have sort of realistic, brutal-looking moves and so on, but it also makes a real effort to remind you that, yes, you are playing a video game and this is ridiculous and you should be having fun with it. And yeah, that carried on with these Dreamcast games that you're talking about here. I'm just watching some Zombie Revenge footage now, and it's absolutely built on that sort of thing. There's like things like when your time gets down to less than 10 seconds, there's a big flashing message in the middle of the screen going, "There's no time!"
Yeah. So good. I wanted to talk about Cannon Spike too, but then I remembered that's more of a shooter. Mm-hmm. But that I very much like, I consider Cannon Spike part of this like group, but that was more of a twin stick shooter, honestly.
Okay.
It's not a beat 'em up. Doesn't have the same gameplay emphasis, but it has a very similar presentation.
Yeah.
So then, like, kind of transitioning also, like, before the indie sphere, I also wanted to talk a little bit about Legend of Mana.
Okay, yeah.
Did you ever play Legend of Mana?
No, Mana games are, I think I've said before, a bit of a black spot in my knowledge, so...
Okay.
Yeah, what's the deal with this one, then?
So, Legend of Mana was a really interesting game. It's technically the fourth game in the Mana series. And it surprised a lot of people because it wasn't really a big open action RPG in like the traditional sense as the first three had been. So, it has towns to explore, and it's very much an RPG. You've got weapons and your character that levels up. But like when you go into dungeons, it's a belt-scrolling beat-em-up.
Right. Okay.
Just like a beautifully rendered, cartoony fantasy belt-scrolling beat-em-up. Okay. But a lot of the things we attribute to that presentation, specifically like a heavy focus on spatial awareness, enemy management, a lot of hit stun and timing, even as far as the movement goes. So like. It was noticeably different from prior Mana games because you in an action RPG, you have a very certain expectation for like this specific style of like 4-directional or like 8-directional movement, right? Yeah. Like if I turn around and walk into the foreground or background, I'm going to see my character's back.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to see my character's face. That happens in towns in Legend of Mana, but it doesn't happen in dungeons.
Okay.
It's very much belt scroll. Like, your character shuffles up and down. Like, if you walk into the distance, into the background, or forward into the foreground, like, you shuffle, but you're still facing sideways in just the way you would expect from a belt scrolling beat 'em up.
Yeah.
So it was very weird. Like, what is this I'm playing? And like, I remember as a kid being like, why is this Streets of Rage? Like, I was like I was like confused by it. It's good. It's an incredible game, very different, and it kind of spearheaded what would become a hallmark of the Mana series from 3 forward, which is in the same way in the Final Fantasy vein. Like, no two Mana games are really the same anymore. Like, Mana games are always like radically experimental after Legend, but it's weird because it leveraged belt scrolling beat 'em up gameplay with an RPG.
Yeah. And that's cool. I mean, I remember sort of sometimes playing beat 'em ups and thinking, yes, this is cool, but this would be really cool if it was in a longer game. So yeah, I'm kind of sorry I haven't played that, because it sounds like exactly the sort of thing I'd really enjoy.
Yeah, and it's drop dead gorgeous. Yeah, like unbelievably gorgeous. Yeah, it's a really interesting game, and it's kind of a really strong proof of concept of kind of the evolution of beat 'em ups we started talking about earlier, right? In the first episode, which is like what I like to call the children of Kunio-kun. Yeah. Right? Like, when Kunio-kun and River City Ransom came about, they made a line in the sand about, like, now this is for the home. This is a beat 'em up for the home. So let's put more meat on those bones. Let's give RPG elements in the mix where you can level up, develop a character, collect currency to buy items, a larger map to explore, like that kind of stuff. And Legend of Mana was kind of like a crowning point of that in like 1999. Like, this was an RPG, like a full-fledged RPG with towns and weapons to collect, but also with traditional belt-scrolling gameplay for the action portions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think along those lines, it's probably worth mentioning Crimson Tears as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Crimson Tears is a great example of this, because it's when I think about the action in Crimson Tears, it felt a bit like Zombie Revenge and Dynamite Cop. Yeah, that like weighty beat 'em up. Yeah. So Crimson Tears, for those who haven't come across it before, this was developed by what were they called? Dream Factory. Yeah. So Dream Factory, they originally made air guides on PS1, which was probably best known for being the 3D fighting game that had Final Fantasy VII characters in it. But one of the interesting things about air guides was the PlayStation version, as well as having a full port of the arcade version, also had this surprising inclusion of a complete dungeon crawling action RPG in there as well. Yeah.
And what Crimson Tears is basically taking that idea and then building that off into its own original game. And so what you've got is basically it's kind of a sort of almost a mystery dungeon style structure, in that you go into randomly generated dungeons, but rather than just sort of exploring a maze as you do in a conventional turn-based mystery dungeon game, you move into different rooms, and typically you have to clear a room of enemies before you can move on to the next one, and that's where the sort of beat 'em up thing comes in. So you have this environment through which you can move, and you have to kill all the enemies using your character's various moves and combo attacks and different weapons and that sort of thing. There's a really nice feeling of physicality to the combat in Crimson Tears as well, but then there's also a few additional mechanics you have to manage in there. Like there's a heat mechanic, so that your character can overheat, which means that they can massively increase their attack power, but they also drain their health and lose a lot of defense as well. So there's some additional mechanics going on there as well. But yeah, Crimson Tears is a really cool game that I like a lot. And it's another good example of taking the conventions of beat-em-up mechanics and so on, and then fitting them into a different structure that is very much designed for the home rather than for the arcade experience. But yeah, it's a super cool game that's well worth checking out if you've got access to a PS2.
I remember when I first told you to check that out, and then you like grabbed the copy, and it like totally like wrecked you. You were like so into it for like a couple weeks. It's great. It's one of the coolest games that nobody ever played.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody played that game. It had a beautiful cell shaded character models. Like, what a game.
Yeah, fantastic game. I really should go and finish it at some point. I got to a point where it was getting a bit difficult, so I kind of set it aside for a little while. So I should definitely get back to that at some point. But there's some really cool boss fights in that as well. I remember a lot of sort of really interesting sort of pattern recognition boss fights and that sort of thing. And it also did kind of a proto Dark Souls go and get your body thing as well, didn't it? Because if one of your characters died, you could then go in and send one of the other characters to rescue them, but you had to do that against a strict time limit, and the only way you could find them was by following audible prompts, which is really interesting. And then if you pulled that off, you could get some nice experience bonuses for that as well.
That's that's a holdover from like the Diablo action RPG.
Yeah, definitely. But super cool game. Definitely well worth checking out.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting stuff in that kind of 32-bit and PS2 era, like transitory period.
Mm-hmm.
I know we had mentioned kind of yesterday when we were talking, like there's a couple games that I lamentably haven't played, but that definitely like function in this sphere too, which was Squaresoft's Bouncer on the PS2, and there was also an American-developed successor to Final Fight Streetwise. I haven't played either of those myself, but
no, I haven't either.
I know Bouncer is quite well regarded.
Yeah, Bouncer was sort of one. It was one of the. Was it a launch game for PS2?
Yeah, or at least early, like first year PS2.
Yeah, certainly very early, and I remember it being quite a showcase title for PS2 in terms of sort of smoothness and slickness of movement and number of characters on screen, and sort of how much better the PS2's 3D graphics were than the PS1. It was sort of an early showcase of sort of that. I always feel like PS2 has a very distinct sort of slickness about a lot of its early games, and often that was an illusion created by heavy use of motion blur. And looking at some footage of the Bouncer, it seems that was very much in evidence here as well. But it's it's got that very distinctive early PS2 look about it, for sure. But it's one that I remember had quite mixed reviews for various reasons.
I think the big thing was that just people were pissed that it was a Squaresoft game that wasn't an RPG.
Yeah, I think that was it. And also with it being sort of a beat 'em up style thing, it was also quite short, I believe as well, which again sort of pissed people off because they were at a point where they were expecting a home console game to be longer, and then you have the Bouncer, which I'm looking at a full story playthrough YouTube video right now, and it's 1 hour and 46 minutes. So if you go in there expecting a Final Fantasy, you're going to be a bit disappointed. But to be fair, it never positioned itself as such. So you only really have yourself to blame if you went in with the wrong expectations. So. But yeah, no, I've never played that. It's one that I've always kind of meant to pick up, but I've never got round to for some reason. It's one you can get dead cheap these days as well, because being a launch PS2 game, it was super common as well. So I'll have to try and grab myself a copy of that at some point.
Yeah, so I mean, with that said, do you want to launch into discussing some of the modern indie stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably the place that I definitely would want to start, and my sort of quintessential modern indie beat 'em up, would be the dearly departed Scott Pilgrim game.
Indeed.
Yes. So this came out. When did this come out? It was
2010.
Quite a while ago now, was it?
2010. 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Jesus, 10 years ago. And it was an Ubisoft game of all things. And I remember it being a huge surprise for everyone when it came out. One, for it being an Ubisoft game that wasn't an Ubisoft game, and two, for being really, really good.
Yeah, it was licensed, so what right did it have to be good?
Yeah, exactly. So what they'd done with the Scott Pilgrim game is that they had just taken the source material in kind of the loosest possible way, and then built something inspired by it, rather than that was sort of strictly following the story of either the comics or I think the movie was around that
Yeah,
time,
this was a
wasn't it?
tie-in
So-
for the movie specifically because it has when you fire it up, it has a pixel art universal, and that's why.
Oh yes, that's right.
That's why you can't buy it anymore.
Yeah.
Because Ubisoft lost the distribution rights with Universal. Like that's why the whole thing is like so. Like when we say that when Pete mentioned earlier that Scott Pilgrim's dearly departed. Scott Pilgrim is the poster child game for psychos like me who are obsessed with only collecting physical titles now because you cannot buy Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game, anymore. It does not exist on a marketplace for you to purchase anywhere. The only way to play Scott Pilgrim versus the World is to have it downloaded on a hard drive or to have record that you bought it because like the PlayStation Store, for instance, they can't legally prevent you from downloading it, but you have to go like roundabouts into your purchase history to access it to re-download it, like if your PS3 dies.
Yeah.
But you cannot buy this game. If you didn't buy this game when it came out and when it was commercially available, then you can't get it now.
Yes,
I mean,
and also
legally.
this was a console exclusive as well, so there's not a particularly easy way to back it up either. So I mean, there are ways to sort of get backup versions and pirate copies of PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 games, but it's a lot trickier and a lot more effort than it would be if it was available on PC as well, which is an awkward part of the whole thing. But yeah, it's a crying shame that this game isn't available anymore because it's fantastic. It is so good. It's an evolution of what you were just talking about with the Kunio-kun games.
I mean, let's be frank. This is a Kunio-kun game.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is 100% in all but name.
Yes, absolutely. So you've got sort of the RPG mechanics. You've got leveling up. You've got going into shops to buy food, which increases your stats. You've got a strong emphasis on replaying to power up your characters and sort of replaying levels and being able to beat stuff a lot more easily. And yeah, it's a fantastic game. And we should absolutely also mention the presentation as well, which was what's his name? Paul Robertson?
Yeah, Paul Robertson. Yeah, this is the first encounter I ever had with Paul Robertson's work.
Yes, same. So I think you know a bit more about him than me. So do you want to give us a bit of context?
I mean, I don't really know much about him other than the fact that I'm obsessed with his entire like body of work. Like he's one of my personal heroes. I don't know much about him as a person, but essentially Paul Robertson is a very talented pixel artist with a very distinct visual style. And he is most commonly known for his collaborations with, so Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the people at Ubisoft who made this game would later leave Ubisoft and become Tribute Games.
Oh, really? That makes a lot of sense.
So this is Tribute Games. This is a Tribute game in all but name. Tribute Games didn't exist when this was made, but the development team at Ubisoft who made this would leave and found Tribute. So Paul Robertson it was their pal. So like when you play like Mercenary Kings or Curses and Chaos or what's that other game? Flint Hook. Yeah, it's all Paul Robertson because Tribute loves working with him and they all work together. So I mean we also have like Scott Pilgrim versus the World to thank for that. Like we wouldn't have Tribute Games if it wasn't for them. But like, I mean, Paul Robertson, besides his work in games, his kind of work has a lot of cross-media potential. So he has the distinct honor of actually being asked by Fox to do a Simpsons opening.
Oh, cool.
So like Paul Robertson actually did a full pixel art animated Simpsons opening.
Nice.
So like that's a real thing. He collaborates with Adult Swim quite a bit to do promotional material for like Rick and Morty and like some of their other properties. So like his works, there's a chance you've seen Paul Robertson's work whether you know it or not. Yeah,
definitely.
He also makes these giant like multi-thousand by multi-thousand pixel animated posters, which are unreal. And some of his work is kind of known for like it's being extremely irreverent, like nudity, gore, but like with a cutesy presentation. So it's like very strange and like off center. Like his original work is quite amazing.
Yeah. I think after playing Scott Pilgrim, I think one of the first things I saw of his that was not a game or something like that was Pirate Baby's Cabana Battle Street Fight 2006.
I don't think I know that.
I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but it's a 12-minute animation that is presented basically as a side-scrolling beat 'em up, and it's all in black and white, and it's just fantastic. And again, that's incredibly irreverent. There's tons of blood and gore and ridiculous things going on, and like the main guy beating people around the head with a baseball bat and knocking zombies' heads off and that sort of thing. And it's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Okay, I have seen this.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
This is from 2006, so this is from before Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing I like about this is basically the sort of style of this is very much what he did in the Scott Pilgrim game. So, like, I looked at this game. Yeah, I looked at this video thinking, I want to play this game. And then I realised that I already had played this game because it was basically the Scott Pilgrim game.
Yeah, exactly.
So Paul Robertson's thing very much is sort of having this sort of deliberately limited, using the sort of deliberate limitations on resolution and colour palette and stuff like that, but then combining that with beautifully elaborate, detailed, smooth animations. So like every animation he does has loads of frames to it, so everything is super slick. And you could see that throughout Scott Pilgrim the game as well, with like even just like incidental stuff like the shopkeepers. You'd walk into a shop and there'd be someone standing there, and just like their idle animation would have ridiculous number of frames of animation in it. Mm-hmm. And it was inevitably a girl with massive tits jiggling up and down as well, which was brilliant.
Paul Robertson specifically has a very unique and magical ability to render beautiful breasts with like 8 pixels. I don't know how he does it, like with his color choice and like specific shape, like, and the way he animates bounce. It's like, this girl is like 16 by 16 and I'm in love. And pixels 16 by 16 pixels. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, he's amazing. And like, I specifically love his style, not to make this like the Paul Robertson episode, but like Paul Robertson does very dark, often black outlines.
Yeah.
And that's something that's often frowned upon in the traditional pixel art community, as being lazy. So like, I love that he's out there repping it, because that's something I like to do in my style too, is like really distinct outlines that I don't downplay. Yeah. So that gives all his work a very, very cartoon look, and it's just stunning.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of that as well. It actually surprised me to hear you say that that's sort of frowned upon, because it's always been kind of my favourite look of pixel art, is that very, very strong black outline of things, of the whole sprite and of the details and that sort of thing. And like you say, that's a very distinctive part of Robertson's style as well, and that's very much in evidence in Scott Pilgrim as well. So yeah, okay. So I mean, Scott Pilgrim is definitely an excellent game, and it like I say, it's very much a cautionary tale for the digital age at the same time as well. So, what other modern stuff have you got in mind that you wanted to mention?
Double Dragon Neon.
Right, I've not played this, so tell me a bit more about this, because I do want to get on this, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Everyone needs to play Double Dragon Neon. Double Dragon Neon is from our good buddies at WayForward.
Yep.
2012 downloadable title. Never got a physical release because it was a downloadable title in the era before it was a thing, right? Like,
yeah.
It's an official entry in the Double Dragon series, like signed off by Technos, like it's accepted. It's got 3D polygonal graphics, but pure traditional belt scroller gameplay. Yeah. The whole idea behind Double Dragon Neon is that it's got a postmodern presentation that emulates and celebrates the aesthetic of the 1980s.
This was one of the first games I remember doing this. Like, this is very fashionable to do now, but I remember this being one of the first games to adopt that particular kind of neon-soaked synthwave aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was not common 8 years ago. Now it's like everything. But like, Double Dragon Neon did that before it was cool. And like, it's not just the aesthetic, it's the music. There's like a Jake Kaufman soundtrack because it's WayForward. Yeah. But like, there's like new wave songs, like just brand new wave songs, like made in the 80s style. like for like some of the soundtracks, for some of the level soundtracks, there's so the whole like thing about the game is that the equipment you collect are tapes, mixtape cassettes. There's two different kinds, right? There's the stance tapes and the special move tapes. You get to equip one of each. The special move tapes are pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, oh, this one's a cyclone kick, this one's a bomb, this one's a heal spell, whatever. It governs which special move you get to use. But the stance tapes are really unique because they function more like job classes.
Yeah.
So it's not like a piece of equipment like a weapon or armor you equip, but you equip a stance, and that affects all of your stats. Like, it rebalances them.
Yeah.
So it changes the way your character plays and behaves. And then some of them also confer bonuses. So like there's a magician one, right, that gives you better magic regen. So you're a little weaker, but you can use your special moves more often.
Yeah.
The game also has a parry mechanic. So it has a dodge roll and a block. If you block with proper timing, you get what's called Gleam. And when you have Gleam, you do double damage.
Okay.
So there's like a Risk Taker mixtape you can equip where you have pretty weak stats, but the double damage Gleam bonus lasts twice as long.
Okay.
So if you're good at the parries, you can just keep that going constantly.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of emphasis for replay, right? Because you're going to want to try the different levels over again with different combinations of move and stance. Then to add to that further replay value, the mixtapes get leveled up.
Okay.
So every time you collect a double of a mixtape you already have, it levels up that mixtape.
Okay.
So enemies drop them as loot. You can buy them from shops. So you're always powering yourself up, changing your stats. There's a guy, they have level caps on the mixtape, and you can go to the tape smith and pay him to expand the level cap on the tapes. So you can get more, you can gain more and more power. It's really well made. It's an example of how to do this right, how to take the beat 'em up formula and make it into something with consistent replay value, heavy, strong presentation. It also has the best end credit sequence in any game I've ever played.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I haven't sort of experienced it for myself, but yes, I've heard about this.
Yeah,
I'm just watching some footage of this while you're playing this, and dear God, the feeling of impact to everything you do in this game.
Oh yes,
it's amazing. It's like even there was even like a sequence where he was just putting a key in a lock, and like the way he sort of winds up to do it, and then just slams this key into the lock in the background. It's just like, oh.
Oh yeah. You feel this game. It's a huge like extrapolation of what we talked about in last episode, which was that in an age before Rumble, the use of satisfying sound effects and hit stun were something that made beat 'em ups very unique because it had a very specifically strong sense of physicality. And Double Dragon Neon is this extrapolated to the nth degree. Like the feeling of weight on the dodge roll is like heavy. Like every hit you land, especially if you parry, or like the feeling of wind up for the roundhouse kick. It's like unreal. And it's all done with animation, just good timing, proper framing. Like it's just a really, it's a tight package. It's a really well made game, and I'd give anything to have a physical copy of it.
Yeah, well, I know I'm downloading when we're done here. Then.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll absolutely love it.
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely sure. I remember a load of people talking about it when it first came out and thinking I'd love that, but just for one reason or another, I've just never gotten around to it. But I'm going to have to make some time for that, I think.
Also, the artist who did all the character art, he goes by Genzomon. He's just unreal. He's so good. His specific style, he's very, very popular. It's just, if you've ever wanted to play a beat 'em up where the main enemy is a samurai tribute to Skeletor from He-Man,
Yes.
It's like if you've ever wanted to have the experience of Skeletor kidnapping your girlfriend, and then you go on a beat 'em up adventure to save her, which involves you getting in a dojo that turns out to secretly be a rocket ship, and then you have to and then you have to fight ninjas in outer space while Skeletor berates you, like, then Double Dragon Neon is the game for you.
Fantastic.
It takes nothing seriously.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good segue to talk a little bit about River City Girls then, isn't it?
Yeah, because in many ways River City Girls just feels like a sequel to Double Dragon Neon.
Yeah, absolutely. So River City Girls is an official Kunio-kun game.
Yeah.
But it's sort of over the years Kunio-kun and Double Dragon have kind of crossed over so that they are now sort of unfolding in the same universe. I don't know if that was always the case, but it certainly is now. And so throughout River City Girls, you can meet Billy and Jimmy, and you can meet Samurai Skeletor. He's now running a shop in a basement, and
Skullmageddon.
Yeah, it's so good. And like you go in there and it's like, welcome to my shop.
Incredible. Yeah, he's great.
But yeah, River City Girls takes that sort of classic Kunio-kun structure in that it's a beat 'em up for the home. It doesn't follow the arcade structure. It's a free roaming environment where you can go back and forth between different locations. You can level grind if you want to. You can collect items. You can buy things to increase your stats. There is a linear storyline. There's side quests to do. There's bosses to fight. There's beautiful animated sequences introducing all those bosses, and it's a really cool game. I really enjoy River City Girls.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Soundtrack's great too. Holy shit.
Yes. Again, I think that's sort of taking a lot of cues from Double Dragon Neon as well, isn't it? Because there's some sort of original songs as part of the soundtrack to River City Girls, and a lot of those again are sort of 80s synthwave inspired stuff and that kind of thing. So
yeah. Also, I really loved the enemy recruitment mechanic.
Yes. Yeah.
So like, you can beat enemies into submission, and then sometimes they'll have like a little indicator that you can recruit them, and then they basically become like summons. They become your special, like an extra special move you can pull off.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, and then each of the different character types, they have their own unique animation and attack pattern and stuff like that. So like some will come down and they will sort of roundhouse kick people in the face. Some of them have weapons that they will throw or shoot or that sort of thing. I love the Arnie-inspired ones who are just like...
I can't deal with just, like, the pretty, like, class president girl one that, like, comes down, like, does her, like, flash kick, then, like, checks her face in her compact mirror, like, flips her hair, and then jumps away. I'm like, yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
But this is classic way forward, right? Just like, such a beautiful attention to detail and animation, and like even meaningless characters are so full of character because they're so dedicated to essentially the art of animation.
Yeah. And I mean that extends to a lot of the static imagery as well. So like if you go into the various shops in the game, it shifts from the pixel art aesthetic to this sort of beautifully presented 2D artwork of the two main characters and the shopkeeper, and each of the shopkeepers is unique, and they're presented in their own way, and they've got their own voices. And for those who sort of follow things like internet and YouTube culture, a lot of those voices are like guests from who are famous in their own right for various things. So like if you watch Game Grumps, for example, then like Danny from Game Grumps is either Billy or Jimmy. I can't remember which one he is. But,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, but like you show up there and he's like, hey dude, how's it going? And then like you meet the other one of Billy and Jimmy, who's running a dojo somewhere else, and he's constantly crying about missing his brother and stuff like that. It's brilliant. There's so many sort of pleasant little sort of series fan service touches throughout that game.
Yeah, it's really good. I don't think there was any surprise when it turned out to be really good, but it's really good. I live in a constant state of wondering what Way Forward's going to do next.
Yeah. they are yet to steer me wrong with anything I've played from them. So yeah, it was like as soon as Limited Run did that Way Forward bundle of 3 games a little while back, I knew that I was going to be a lot of money down very shortly afterwards.
That's a really interesting pack of games too. Mystic Bell is not technically a Way Forward game; they just published it.
Yeah,
but it is beautiful, and it is made by Andrew Botto, who is perhaps one of the finest pixel artists working today. Like if I had to list the top 5 most talented like professional pixel artists, like Andrew Botto would be one of them. We've mentioned 2 more of them in today's episode. Hank Nieborg and Paul Robertson.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting how a lot of these sort of really talented pixel artists of this type really gravitate towards this genre as well. And I think it's because this genre is very much set up for kind of character-centric pixel artists to really show their stuff, because there's such a strong emphasis on characters from sort of a low angle and being close up and in your face and personal with them, that it's really ideally suited to the kind of work that these guys do.
There's also a specific need for a very skilled animation framing, which is a challenge that a lot of these guys gravitate towards, because as we discussed, the animation framing and the timing is essential for creating the illusion of like sense of weight. So like people like Paul Robertson who excel at that are kind of drawn to this.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, a lot of good stuff. I also wanted to mention, I don't know if this is one you've ever had an experience with, but Sacred Citadel.
I've heard of it, but I've not played it.
So Sacred Citadel is a really unique one because it's from 2013. It's developed by South End Interactive. It's a spin-off arcadey style game to the Sacred action RPG franchise. Have you ever played any of the Sacred games?
Again, I'm familiar with them, but I've not actually played them for myself. But yeah, I am familiar.
The first 2 are like Diablo style games. The third one's more of like a third-person action game. But what's really interesting about Sacred Citadel is, first of all, like presentation-wise, it's got a high fantasy setting with a really like painterly Western comic book style inspired look. So I really like Sacred Citadel, especially in context of a lot of the other games we've been talking about today and in the previous episode, because most of the games we've talked about have either A, been Japanese, or B, trying to ape a Japanese style.
Yes.
Sacred Citadel isn't really interested in that at all. It's very Western in feel. So it doesn't have the same sense of weight, hit stun, or any of that that we associate with a normal beat 'em up. So it's presented from the kind of traditional belt scrolling perspective we've been talking about, but its entire sense of weight and movement is radically different from any of the other games we've talked about. It's a lot floatier, and the emphasis is more on combos that flow than it is on hit stun. So there's the same kind of importance to like enemy juggling and crowd control, but because of the higher emphasis on movement and mobility, the way you have to handle that is a little different than in a Japanese style beat 'em up. It's more about staying on your toes and chipping away at multiple enemies and like weaving in between them.
Yeah.
And then there's also air juggles. Like Guilty Gear style. Like you can launch your enemies into the air, then jump up and then like hammer around them in the air and then knock them down. Like, so there's a lot of interesting combo play that's possible because of its own unique identity in terms of the way combos and attacks work. There's 3 playable characters with like RPG like classes, and they're different. They level up and gain stats. You allocate those stats with points you're given every time they level up, very much in a Western RPG style. And the other thing that makes it really unique is that there's loot.
Okay.
Like, this is going back to its roots as a spin-off of the Sacred franchise, right? Which are games in the Diablo mold, but you actually get equipment. Those equipments have random perks, stat differences, just like they would in a Diablo-style action RPG. Yeah. So I like this game a lot. And, like, I don't know anyone who's ever played it. Like, I've never met anyone else who's played it. But I really like this one.
What was this on? Was it Xbox?
Everything. I have it on PS3, but it's also on Xbox One and Xbox 360, and it's available on Steam as well.
Oh, cool. I have to give that a look then.
It's readily available. Yeah, it's a really neat game. It's also got a really cool soundtrack with kind of a like fantasy with like lots of drums, but then like a weird like bit of like electronic like
cool
synth to it. Like it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sounds good. Some of what you're describing there, I'm aware we've been going for 45 minutes so far, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but some of what you're describing there with things like sort of the combos and the air juggles and kind of bringing in some influences from like fighting games and stuff as well, kind of ties in a bit with this sort of beat 'em up adjacent stuff that I wanted to mention. So I just wanted to pay a little bit of lip service to a few games that kind of fit this mold, and then a lot of these I think are things that we can talk about in more detail on a subsequent episode. So like I say, I won't go into too much detail now, but for example, what you were talking about with the various combos and moves and air juggles there reminds me very much of what Senran Kagura does.
Yeah,
because Senran Kagura actually does have its roots as a beat 'em up. If you play Senran Kagura Burst on 3DS, that is a side-scrolling beat 'em up in the traditional mold with a large cast of characters and special moves and that sort of thing. But from Shinobi Versus onwards, it moved into sort of 3D arena combat that a lot of people sort of erroneously compare to Warriors games. There are some sort of mechanics in common in terms of sort of how you trigger special moves with a particular number of light attacks and then a strong attack, but other than that, the focus is very different. But definitely what you're describing there, and the concept of fighting your way through large groups of enemies and sort of triggering an air juggle. That is absolutely key to Senran Kagura's mechanics. They call it the aerial rave in that, which is normally a lot of your combos will trigger this sort of green flash which knocks the enemies up into the air, and then there's a specific button that allows you to pursue them up into the air and continue your combat in sort of gravity-defying anime style. So you're just continually hacking and slashing away at enemies up in the sky, sort of floating there, almost like sort of wire fighting kung fu sequences. And that's one of the most sort of distinctive defining characteristics of that series, I think, is that sort of aerial combat that's going on in there. And yeah, for me, that's one of the particularly satisfying things about that series, is sort of being able to gather a huge group of enemies and sort of hack and slash your way through them up in the air all at the same time, and build up astronomical combo numbers and that sort of thing. So it's a very different sort of focus to your average beat 'em up, but again, there's elements in common there certainly as well.
Yeah, I mean, I never played the original Senran Kagura. I only ever played the later ones that had the more Dynasty Warriors feel to it. But I do remember making that connection in my head a lot about how much of the root of the beat 'em up even transitioned into those modern 3D ones, specifically with things like the air juggle and stuff. Yeah. And in the case of those 3D ones in particular, that's then blended with a lot from fighting games as well. Sure. Because although a lot of the levels sort of start off with you fighting through large hordes of enemies, the focus for a lot of it is on anywhere between 1-on-1 and 1-on-3 combat between your character and enemy characters. Sure.
And the way that those unfold is very much sort of fighting game style. So sort of being able to kind of manage the space between you, keep an eye on what's going on, be aware of animations and attack ranges and danger zones and that sort of thing. And I think that's probably most apparent in Estival Versus, is the one that felt most strongly like a fighting game for me. Burst Renewal on PlayStation 4, they kind of took a different approach where they're actually sort of visible telegraphs of moves and things, which kind of changed the focus of it. And I really liked that side of thing, but it kind of changed how it felt. Sure. Because there was a lot more in the way of sort of anticipating things and recognizing the kind of attack patterns that you were going to be seeing and that sort of thing. But it's one way that series has shown itself to not just sort of be recreating the same game over and over with each of its installments, even if they might initially appear to be quite similar to one another. But that's a long-standing favourite of mine with good reason. So just from a mechanical perspective, and that's not even getting into sort of the appeal of the characters and the stories and so on as well, which is a whole other discussion, certainly. But yeah, I think I mean we've both mentioned Warriors there as well, and I think Warriors is another sort of beat 'em up adjacent sort of style of game that's worth mentioning, because again you've got that sort of space management and awareness of what's going on around you, and familiarizing yourself with your character's moves and mechanics, and in a lot of cases a strong feeling of impact as well. It doesn't tend to happen with every character in Warriors, I find, depending on their sort of weapon focus and so on. But there are certain characters in Warriors who have a really strong feeling of physicality to their attacks and so on. So like if I think of someone like Sun Tzu from Warriors of Rochi is a really good example, because he's got very satisfying sound effects for his weapons, and that gives a really nice sense of impact.
Isn't he the guy that just has like giant, like, he's the guy that just like his weapons are just like two like pillars of like metal, aren't they? Like just
yeah. I've no idea what their weapon's called, but yeah, it's basically just like a big stick with a handle, and he's just like beating people around the head with them and that sort of thing. But they complement this sort of animations for that really nicely with some really satisfying sort of kung fu whoosh, sound effects.
Yeah,
it's great. So and I mean then beyond that as well. You've then got sort of the whole new genre, which is sort of the character action genre as well, which again is a discussion in itself. Sure. But I think it's worth acknowledging that that genre owes a lot to beat 'em ups in terms of structure and mechanics as well.
But Kamiya loves the beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Kamiya is arguably the master of the character action game because he made one, right? He made God Hand, and God Hand is considered to be like one of the greatest modern send-ups of the beat 'em up ever. Mm-hmm. I didn't really bring it up because I've never played it myself, but
me neither.
That game is legendary in terms of the way it celebrates the beat 'em up.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I say, all those things are things that that are worth exploring in their own right in the future. But I think we've covered a nice sort of cross section of sort of the more modern side of things, and
I think
those crossover titles there.
I think there's one more thing worth mentioning.
Okay, go for it.
This is obviously segue into a potential much larger discussion, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't bring up Yakuza.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a widely believed theory that as far as Sega's concerned, Yakuza is Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
Like, because it is, right? I mean, when you think, especially about the original Yakuza, like, what the Yakuza or Ryuga Gotoku games present us with is an open world RPG where the battle sequences are instanced beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, Yakuza's everything we could love about a modern beat 'em up, right? Like, picking up items and using them, blocking, dodging, hit stun, combos. This is it. Like, this is probably the most modern evolution of the home beat 'em up, is Yakuza.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'd rather do Yakuza episodes, but I think it's important. I think it's important to really discuss how Yakuza kind of represents the pinnacle of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think, Yakuza is really interesting because it's really hard to pigeonhole Yakuza.
Yeah,
and that's a great thing, I think, and that's one of the wonderful things about it. It's like I've seen some people refer to Yakuza as a brawler, and I know that's wrong. Like that just immediately strikes me as being wrong, but they're not wrong to mention it because, as we say, combat in Yakuza is very much inspired by modern beat 'em ups. But then you look at all the other stuff you can do in Yakuza as well, and you think, well, it's clearly not just that, but it's, as you say, it's an absolute evolution of what we're talking about there, of basically an evolution of the Kunio-kun formula, I guess, in many ways.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, but as you say, I think that's definitely something that we can spend at least a whole episode talking about, probably for each game, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah. Now they're all out, we can potentially think about doing that at some point.
Yeah,
but
Yakuza is my favorite game to buy and never play. because it's terrifyingly daunting.
Oh God, yeah, I know the feeling. But yeah, I've got that sort of mentally penciled in for doing some sort of mega feature at some point, because I do want to do them, because the Yakuza games that I have played, which are the original PlayStation 2 versions of 1 and 2, and then the PlayStation 3 version of 3, I had such a good time with all of them that I definitely want to revisit them at some point. But it's, as you say, it's just sort of getting over that initial mental block of getting into them. And it's not even necessarily a reasonable mental block, because the actual sort of story side of Yakuza games tends not to be that long. So you can technically beat a Yakuza game probably in about 10 hours or so. But
yeah, I've seen 100 hour, 200 hour Yakuza files online.
Yes.
But that's just because everyone wants to manage the hostess clubs and race RC cars and.
Well, yeah. It's because it's more than just that main story. It is a living in this little specific part of Japan simulator, and yeah, wonderful experiences. So definitely something for us both to at least think about doing at some point. But anyway, anything else you want to bring up before we wrap up for today?
No, I think that's it for me. That's some good games we've talked about today.
All right, good stuff. And I'm off to download Double Dragon Neon then, I guess.
Oh, I can't wait. The level 2 music will destroy you.
I'm sure. All right, so before we leave for today then, would you like to tell people where to find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always find my artwork at mrgilderpixels.com. I also share work in progress shots and finished pieces on Instagram. My screen name on there is also Mr. Gilder Pixels.
Cool. And you can find me on MoeGamer.net, writing most weekdays. So that's where all my written work is. You can also find me on YouTube. I rediscovered the other day that I've actually got a friendly short YouTube URL, so I don't have to remember that sort of 300 character unique identifier. So if you want to find me on YouTube, if you're listening on SoundCloud or so on, you can go to youtube.com/C/Pete Davison, and you can find me there. I do Atari A to Z 3 days a week, covering Atari 8-bit, Atari ST, and games from the Atari Flashback Classics collection, along with Let's Plays of the Warriors series and Final Fantasy, and occasional other bits and pieces when I find the time and or energy to do them as well. So do check them out, because I work hard on that stuff, and it'd be lovely to have some more views on some of them. Just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching and or listening, and we will see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. Be sure to check out MoeGamer.net for new articles on Japanese and Japanese-inspired video games, new and old, every weekday. Every month, MoeGamer features an in-depth exploration of an individual game or series as its cover game, so be sure to check the archives to see if your favourite has had a deep dive yet. If you'd like to support the site directly, please consider becoming a patron or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.